probably done more research into the electromagnetic aspect of this war. And it is a war. We can see the chemtrails, but we don't see necessarily the electromagnetic stuff that gets pulsed through us. We have, Brad mentioned HAARP, there's NextRad, there's Gwen, we got the 5G stuff coming along, and it is really, really insidious. We are electromagnetic beings, and electromagnetic waves mess with not only our brains, but our nervous systems, our muscles. It's really, really, really creepy. And Elana's book, Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. You can get this on Amazon. And come on up. And you can speak about the new one as well.
So this is the cover of the book that will be out in January. What I've done is I've put together a picture of not just weather, but all the different operations that are now served by weather engineering and the ionizing of our atmosphere. What we're looking at here, the ring around planet Earth, will be composed of the chemicals, very similar signature that we are breathing now every day. So this is about control over the Earth, surveillance down to the DNA level, and it's also about solar system communication for various crafts that will now be going around the solar system. So this is what the book is about, of life on Earth, nature, and human consciousness on the human scale, not a machine scale. So it is a spiritual war, as Brad indicated, and it's all hands on deck now. Each of us is a scientist. Each of us is now exploring what is occurring in front of our perceptions. And that's what I want to address. Science fiction times, issues upon which the future welfare of the Earth and its peoples hinge, are marginalized now as conspiracy theory. And scientists and doctors who step forward to sound the alarm are discredited, ostracized, or killed. High-tech research is dominated by military and defense corporation grant monies, compartmentalization and need-to-know security clearance, and non-disclosure agreements signed in blood, while the good old boy peer review system plays gatekeeper. Despite the mis and disinformation that must be waded through, the internet is our only town square and university, all wrapped in one for researchers like me, probing beneath the national security shroud thrown over full-spectrum dominance technologies coming online daily at a pace that defies reason. The death of the middle-class dream, the rise of Agenda 2030, artificial intelligence, neuroscience, and transhumanism. All are parts of the elite Luciferian dream known as globalism. Geoengineering the Earth's atmosphere is not just about weather, wireless communication, drones, and directed energy weapons. It is about aiding in the breakdown of the immune system so that the human being and all of life on Earth can be genetically altered. From here on out, we must learn to think in big picture terms. Intelligence, very much information about how to ionize, how to turn our atmosphere into a mini ionosphere. So this is mainly history. We hear about the silly term chemtrails. Well, it came from the military. The first place that it was seen was in this executive summary. You can see at the bottom, it says, patent number, blah, blah. It has also been proposed to release large clouds of barium in the magnetosphere so that photoionization will increase the cold plasma density, thereby producing the electron precipitation through enhanced Whistler mode interaction. And then it says barium is the second most common chemtrail ingredient. The other place that we find it is in the U.S. Air Force Academy Chemical Manual. So I just wanted to remind us of that we do not need to be apologetic about using a military term for the chemical trails in the sky. Out of the, whether you think of it as a tanker with a separate system or you think of it as coming out of the combustion chamber of a jet engine, it is very different from the little tiny above their contrail. Here's our skies. I do remember the deep blue skies of yesteryear. And today we mainly have the ones after, that says after. Climate Mafia, all the decals of the various agencies involved in this operation. And recently, geoengineers are redefining clouds to include those created with chemicals and radio frequency and microwave heat. Whole new species of clouds are magically appearing in our anthropogenically engineered skies. And I'm going to try to say all these. They have wonderful Latin names. Power plants. Fluctus, those are Kelvin-Helmholtz waves. And of course, 5 species of Cirrus contralis, or otherwise known as cirrus, made from contrails. And those 5 types are uncinus, fibratus, castellanus, flocus, and spisatus. So it would seem like just more scientific hubris and Latin word games if it weren't for the fact that the natural world is being redefined in the image geoengineers and their handlers decide. Masters are going to have to add some other clouds. This would be perhaps a, I don't know it in Latin, but a barium-lithium cloud, a square cloud, a Godzilla cloud, and a UFO obscured behind a plasma cloud. Here is the famous HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project. It's still up there. It's under the University of Alaska Fairbanks now. But as I said, all universities have been militarized, and so I'm sure it's still a military intelligence program. But it is not it is recalibrated to work with many, many other ionospheric heaters, many of which are now mobile and small. This just to remind you from probably science that you had in high school. Our troposphere is very thin, and above us is the stratosphere, where a lot of military jets fly, and talks about how the ionospheric heater works. It bounces energy off of the ionosphere and can then steer it to various parts, so whether it's being used as a weapon or to divert a weather system. This is, you can see here the submarine communications. That's the ionosphere is also used for that, bouncing them off. And the looking for oil under the ground and tomography, or other buried targets, military installations underground, etc. Very useful for military. Here, this is just one article from the Journal of Geophysical Research. Those, I can't remember, 20,000, 60,000 kilometers into space. Very, very large. On Earth, we have the geomagnetic field. And this geomagnetic field is crucial to us, not just to the animals, but to us. Here is one of the systems that is probably wreaking havoc on that magnetic field, that geomagnetic field of the Earth, which is the U.S. Navy's hydroacoustic data acquisition system. And I believe that this is, you can see the wave coming from Ascension Island and pulsing, being pulsed north in the Atlantic.
Clouds in the sky, you see they're actually hot. It's causing heat in the sky and in the clouds, coming down way over there. It's actually skipping off the ionosphere and coming back down. I've mentioned this in other films of mine, and it is not exactly
ionized atmosphere. It's battery ready. It's like an antenna. It's like a virtual antenna, constantly ready. As long as they keep flying the chemtrails, and as long as they keep zapping it with radio frequency, lasers, weather systems, they can use weather systems to generate energy. So this is a military operation. Military operations depend upon the atmosphere being ionized. Massive animal die-offs, yes. Navy programs. I would hold the Navy primarily culpable for animal die-offs, certainly in the ocean. Okay, normalization of the chemtrails geoengineering conspiracy theory begins as Star Wars is publicly reinstated. And what I mean by that is, yes, I'm talking about the Star Wars program of the 1980s, which was supposedly tabled back then. It was because the atmosphere was not conductive enough, and they needed to do another 10, 20 years until Bernard Eastland's patent for HAARP was available so that they could now pull energy from the ionosphere and sort of impregnate our atmosphere with those ions and then keep those ions zapped every day. So this is, we're looking at the SDI program, the Strategic Defense Initiative, the Star Wars program. This was in January. I know you must have noticed that you probably hadn't heard something about geoengineering or much since the Paris conference in 2015, late 2015. But now we find out that there's good old David Keith trotted out into the press again, geoengineer David Keith, and a green light has been given for geoengineering. Truthfully, geoengineering has been going on for 20 years under Project Cloverleaf, and they're making it sound like, gee, we're going to start it right now because, gosh, we have to. Giant reflector in orbit above to mirror the heat back into space, the idea of the cirrus cloud cover, how it's going to deflect the heat, and blah, blah, blah. I'm so tired of this disinfo, misinfo, and the using of timing to make the public believe that it's new. This is very old stuff. Here's Jack Cruz, a little in touch with, some more than others. He often has very good things to say, Jack Cruz. And he talks about solar radiation management, which is also has the nifty title of Solar Shield now, and how it has to do with the stock market. Yes, I've covered that in the Chemtrails HAARP book, that we're looking at geoengineering derivatives, weather derivatives, and some people are making a fortune off of disasters. That's just how it is now under disaster capitalism. He talks here, he talks about digital heroin leads to people craving man-made carbohydrates, opiates, and technology. We wonder why burying the sun has led to mankind's decline, because we never sit down and put the story together in a proper sequence, and this is true. If we're constantly being lied to by the mainstream media, how exactly can we do that? Well, you know, not everybody can do what I do, 24/7 research and dig, dig, dig. Then here, gee, it'd be nice if we could build this thing. This is already happening. This is the LDAL. 13 days after the AMC-9 satellite breakup, President Trump revived the National Space Council, to be led by Vice President Mike Pence, after which the massive after which the massive $696 billion Star Wars National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, passed in the House of Representatives. Tucked in the bill is a proposal endorsed by the House Armed Services Committee leaders to create a Space Corps as a new military branch to stay ahead of China and Russia, of course. And this Space Corps it's in the Senate now. I don't know. Has anyone heard? Has it passed? Yes. It has, yes. I'm not surprised. I thought it would pass. So now we have the Space Corps. That's the 6th branch of the U.S. military. Everybody knows we needed another branch. And so they will be in charge of, I assume the Space Corps will be in charge of things like the Aurora. Let me see if I have, yeah, the Northrop Grumman X-47B Pegasus. Here's another one that was spotted going down Main Street in Cowley County, Kansas in 2011. And maybe even in charge of so-called UFO fleets that may just as well be phased array radar manifestations, sort of in a Project Bluebeam sort of way. So now I arrive at my list that I always bring out because it's such a valuable list. It guides me in my research. This is a list that Clifford Carnicom primarily came up with in 2005. And we have weather warfare, environment modification. That would be weather engineering. We hear a lot about that, but we hear less about the other things. And what I'm trying to say is I think we need to hear more about the other things as well. Planetary geophysical operations, electromagnetic operations, directed energy warfare operations, biological transhumanism operations, surveillance neural operations, and detection obscuration of exotic propulsion systems. So this is my guiding credo right here. Our Gwen towers, our all the electromagnetic equipment that we use to move weather systems, all of these, including satellite appendices that are for gauging weather, measuring weather, anything weather, all of these are dual use. Because telecommunications corporations are all military contractors. We need to think of our cell phones in a different way. These are little transceivers that now we all carry around and can't do without, and young people are addicted to. This is a brilliant move on the parts of the powers that be. This includes the conductive nanoparticles that are coming down, the metals, the chemical plasma cloud cover, and the weather energy transfer. And the secret is it's all dual use. It can be used for civilian, it can be used for military. This is kind of cool. I mean, we all know this. We've seen these on the net, right? You can watch weather systems. But this is the high-res satellite looping. At the 16th Conference on Planned and Inadvertent Weather Modification in 2005, a paper about artificial atmospheric ionization was read. I'll just read a little bit from it while you're watching this. Galactic cosmic rays have been positively correlated to the Earth's low cloud cover. But there is also evidence that electrically charged aerosols are more efficiently scavenged by cloud droplets, some of which evaporate, producing evaporation aerosol, which are very effective ice formation nuclei. So we learned from the cosmic rays about these particles, but we can do it now. The assumption is made that artificially generated corona effect ionization should act as much the same way as cosmic ray ionization, with some differences, and that's what we're doing. This is about aluminum, and I have, around the world, installations in service to the Space Fence are all digitally calibrated to one another. Digital wireless technology in an atmosphere constantly ionized by conductive metal nanoparticles is turning our soil alkaline and our oceans acid. The aluminum falling from the sky and being drilled into the earth is for military industrial intelligence agendas of control, not just weather. So here you see three things named. It's being used in spraying, and you look at the formula, and we don't have to have a chemistry course here to see that it's very similar in all three cases. For spraying, fracking, hydraulic fracturing, which is the main way that oil wells are now doing business, and sounding rockets. The sounding rockets blasting off into near-Earth orbit have the same chemical composition. And if you think this is simply an economic decision, you're wrong. This is actually exactly what they need in order to calibrate all of these instruments as one instrument of control. That's what it's primarily for. This is aluminum. You may have seen these fibers. I mean, we hear about it on the internet, on Facebook. The aluminum-coated nano-nylon fibers in rain samples. New ways of delivering the chemicals.
Okay, so this is a pretty darn serious clip. I hope you guys pass this around. People need to see what's going on. I was setting up my scope.
Laptop somewhere would be my guess. And it is this is how it is possible that while there is a general delivery system via jet for, say, everyone in a region, there is also a subsidiary system, it appears, that can deliver particular chemicals to particular areas. That, I believe that would be what that is. Now, regarding the orb situation, which most people immediately jump to the idea of UFOs, I don't think they're UFOs. I think that they are created, primarily. I don't know. Maybe some are from somewhere else, but certainly we have them. So here's an orb leading the chemical trails or perhaps accompanying them. Hard to say. Can you see that orb out there? Okay. So this is yet another facet of the delivery systems. Now here, it's just a patent that is recited, so we'll listen.
An aircraft comprising a gas turbine engine that exhausts a plume of gases in use. The aircraft comprises an ultrasound generator having an ultrasound actuator and a waveguide to direct ultrasonic waves at the exhaust plume to avoid the formation of contrails.
So what she's saying is invisible. They're invisible now. So I'm not sure when on our clear days, I'm not sure our clear days are clear. First of all, they're not really clear, but it could be that the invisible system is being utilized. Here is a chemical trail from a sounding rocket, and this is yet another delivery system, very important to know. Billy Hayes, the HARP man, who's been invaluable to me as an advisor over these last few years, said that sounding rockets leave tons of aluminum oxide in their trail from rocket fuel. With every orbital launch, 20 to 120 tons of aluminum particulates are dumped with the exhaust plume into our upper atmosphere and into orbit, much of which eventually filters down. And it's not just aluminum, lithium's being used as well in these sounding rockets. Again, I remind you that these rockets, they go up to near-Earth orbit, and this chemical trail follows them up, and eventually those chemicals settle into the Saturn-like ring around the equator. Another delivery system, ship tracks. on Navy ships, merchant ships off the coast. They use these a lot in the diverting of weather systems from your state, from California, in the South Pacific. This is a very, very well used method of delivery. And partially it's this. You can see that this, what's called wet surface air cooler technology, WISAC, I think they call it. It's in power plants as well. But here it is. You can see what is on Navy ships and merchant ships possibly. Another delivery system, or perhaps I should say, this one I think is probably used in the guiding and shepherding of weather systems across the United States and other places. This is rainfall enhancement, private ionization companies who are in league with national security or federal operations. And let's see. Here's how it works. You see the ionizer producing charged particles into the desert air. Some go up, those are the negative ones. Some go down, that's positive because the Earth is negative, so it's the positive are drawn to the Earth. And then the moisture condenses around the charged dust that eventually turns to cloud, and you produce rain. Another delivery system, I'm going to whip through all these because I don't want to spend time on them. I've spent a lot of time on them in the Space Fence book. NexRad, these are used to shepherd weather systems across the United States. Fracking, insertion of chemicals, I showed you the chemical formula before, into the Earth. The same chemical configuration as in the aerosols so they can work together. You pulse the fracking well. At the same time, you're pulsing the wind turbines. At the same time, you're pulsing the NexRads. At the same time that you're pulsing perhaps even laser, delivering the weather system from the South Pacific. Everybody thinks these are green. I don't. If you go to one of these wind farms, you will not find one living animal or insect or creature anywhere near these turbines. Electromagnetic operations for plasma energy experiments. This is very, very important. I think they're thinking of using plasma as fuel, as a free energy, but only for the people that own the free energy, not for us, of course. And so they're producing a lot of plasma events in our atmosphere that many people don't know how to construe and are thinking might be UFO. They might think it might be this, that, or the other. But really what they mostly are Birkeland currents and Alvin waves, and then artificial production of plasma density, i.e. clouds. Some clouds being very, very thick and seeming to be actual bodies of clouds that bounce on the Earth. Predictive programming in Battleship 2012. Here you can see the rounding of that that is the Earth. Not only do you need the space fence in near-Earth orbit and various ground instruments to keep it ionized, but you also need to control the poles. So yes, there is a lot of activity going on up in the North Pole and the South Pole. Absolutely, and it's electromagnetic all the way. Methane release, we hear a lot about that, particularly in the Arctic Circle. Methane is interesting because they're going to also turn that into capitalism, into a moneymaker, and may already have done so. Let me see, I've got something else here. And this is a way they say that they destroy the methane and produce diamond dust out of it. I find that hard to believe. What you have here is a picture of how it's called interference technology, interferometry. It's a weapon, if you remember 9/11. I do believe it was used to bring the towers down. I'm not going to spend time today proving that, but I do discuss it in the opening preface to the Space Fence book. You basically produce 2 waves, possibly 3, and you hit the target area altogether at the same pulse frequency, and you have a very destructive force. This was Tesla's weapon of choice. Let's see. I wanted to say this. Anonymous posting to a Cloakcraft article by Jim Kerr, another guy I'm in touch with, about electric craft. And he maintains, as do many people, that we have electric craft now in the skies, UFOs, our own making. That, quote, only use small, highly efficient frozen methane gas generators to create the electricity to power the ion generators. Frozen methane gas is the most abundant power source on the planet. It is easily, safely stored and transported. A 2-foot square cube of frozen methane can provide enough fuel to power a craft for a week. Here is just a paper on scalar gravitational waves that I wanted to show. Some people think it's a conspiracy theory, scalar waves, scalar technology. It's no conspiracy theory. It's completely existing. This is from the Cornell University library, and it's a paper done by a Cornell, Cornell professor, student, I don't know what. Here is the NASA bragging about producing dense artificial plasma clouds in the upper atmosphere, stratosphere, but really they're producing them all the time down here because we are living in an ionized atmosphere. Most of the clouds you see daily, even the cumulus ones, some may have some moisture in them, but most of them are complete plasma. They're plasma clouds. They're dry clouds, plasma being the 4th state of matter. Here's tubes of plasma floating above the Earth. This was a photo taken. How's my time, Patrick? Okay. These tubes, they're quite extraordinary. This is a photo taken. I have no idea from what vantage point, done by a student, a young Chinese woman named Cleo Loy, using the Murchison Wide Field Array radio telescope to probe the magnetosphere. By splitting the observations between the eastern and western ends of the array, she achieved binocular vision, allowing us to see in 3 dimensions. So these plasma tubes, we actually have more on them. And here is looking up through one of those plasma tubes I just showed you at sunset. Imagine that. We're down here. We're looking up through a plasma tube at the sun going to the other side of the Earth. These are the Birkeland currents surrounding our planet, powered by solar wind and drawn through the ionosphere by Earth's magnetic field. Birkeland currents from another vantage point. Electrical. I'm just saying our planet is electrical. You know the wonderful site, the Electric Universe. Very good. Kinetic Alvin waves, plasma energy transporters. They're experimenting with all of these. They're making their own Birkeland currents. They're making their own Alvin waves. They're making their own lightning coming up from the Earth and going vertically to the sky, because our atmosphere is electric. I hate to keep belaboring the point, but I really want you to understand that so that you know what you're looking at. It's like a big lab in the sky, and we're part of it here on Earth. We're part of the same lab. Directed energy weapons. There's more predictive programming in Elysium. You see Chemtrail, they call the gun Chemtrail. You get it. This is from Rosalie Bertell, who has died, a great epidemiologist. The ability of the HAARP Space Lab rocket combination to deliver very large amounts of energy comparable to a nuclear bomb anywhere on Earth via laser and particle beams is frightening. I am not worried about the nuclear bomb anymore. If you haven't read Bruce Cathy, you really should, and then you won't worry anymore either. But I am worried about directed energy weapons. There's what one looks like in Iraq when we went to war there. Afghanistan, I'm sure they had the same thing. Syria, I'm sure they have the same thing. We use wars abroad as places to experiment with our weapons. I recommend you go and see Jim Lee's fantastic interactive map about all the ionospheric heaters and laser installations and blah, 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 radar installations. It's a fantastic map. He's a real genius with the computer. Fiber optics cable all around the Earth, all the way across the oceans. A lot of people think fiber optics means everything's okay. No, it's a very good, it's been weaponized as well. There's one of the mobile HAARPs, the ionospheric heater. Nave Spacecom, the space fence. This was the early space fence. Now it's later. Now we've developed it much further. SuperDarn is part of the space fence. All these installations, they're all part of the space fence. All part of the lockdown. Oh, there's a DOS. Okay, biological transhuman. This is the agency that you really need to look at. Forget the NSA. We already know about them. This one, I think, is in charge of a lot of devious AI-run stuff for planetary lockdown.
Pokemon Go.
Pokemon Go?
Mm-hmm. National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, they developed it.
Ah, interesting. Here's the public law that you need to know. You wonder, how can they do this to us? Well, it's legal. They can use us for research. This is the 5G. All I want to say about the 5G today is that don't think that it's just a little more than 4G. This is a creature of a very different composition. And it's, actually, I am interested. I think I put it up there. No, I didn't. Anthony Patch, who is sort of the go-to CERN guy, for me anyway. Anthony believes that 5G will be able to activate our internal nanobots, namely Morgellons, along with three-strand DNA with a quaternary signal. So that's Anthony. Ebner effect, electromagnetism, altering one species in one generation. There's Joni Morgellons week in his lab looking at amazing stuff under 5,000 power spectroscope. And then this, you remember this, don't you? I mean, just to blow our minds. So the hubris is absolutely jaw-dropping. when you have to put your name on everything, so you get full credit for all the destruction you're doing. Okay, surveillance neural operations, again, dual use. Again, this agency is the one I will be looking at closely in the synthetic biology book. And here we are, the space fence watching over us. I feel so secure now.
There are millions of objects in space.
Instruments will be used as surveillance, as control over planet Earth. There's GEMS. Those are the, I've got it down here. The MEMS are micro-electro-mechanical sensors, and GEMS are global environmental MEMS sensors. And this is the quantum dots that we saw on the NASA insignia on the fiber. All these are used for information and data to control. And here is David Petraeus, who supposedly was fired because of his extramarital relationship, which is ridiculous. He says, he admits it, items of interest will be located, identified, monitored, and remotely controlled through technologies such as radio frequency identification, sensor networks, tiny embedded servers, and energy harvesters, all connected to the next generation internet using abundant, low-cost, and high-powered computing. Mind control, that will be in the synthetic biology book in spades. I won't do this because I think my time is running out, but this is where they're using, let me just show a little though. Again, pre-programming, they're using what I think is the space fence graphics to prepare us for our condition of lockdown. You might think it's CERN. I don't think it's CERN. I think it's what I said. But you've seen them. I don't know if they're still on because I don't have a TV, but you'd know if they still have the, right? They do? Okay.
Internet channels now too.
Okay.
Most expensive, most audacious scientific experiment in history.
And in this one, what I say here is what you need to ask yourself when you see these fantastic news shows in which people are overpaid for lying and reading their cue cards, are my perceptions being managed? Is my cognitive dissonance being managed? So this is about CERN. Again, this person who did the video thinks it's about CERN. I think it's about the space fence.
Subatomic particles called protons speed around the circuit. Powerful supermagnets pull them round faster and faster. 11,000 lights a second.
So is that clear? Yes, this is about brain wave entrainment, or as Bernard Eastlund calls it, cyclotronic resonance. Okay, particle accelerator the size of a piece of glitter, that's next. Right now we have CERN, next we're going to have glitter. I'm sure we already have it. And my last slide, thank you for being so patient. The greatest shortcoming of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function. I think of this often. This is a challenge for us, but we can meet it. We just need to learn to read again, not just watch videos, and think. Thank you very much.